10 years later, it's NES Works Gaiden, Episode 11. I know I said at the end of the Mega Man episode that I'd be moving along to N64 Works, and I will eventually. But I produced that episode back in February before the US entered pandemic lockdown, and the current state of things has caused me to rethink my approach for a while. Until things get back to normal, or at least something approaching normal, I'm going to be taking a looser approach to video works. Which is to say, I'd like to lighten the mood, at least for myself, by making up flimsy excuses to cover some of the games I love but which don't quite fit into the existing video works rubric. Games like Mega Man Legends. Then again, Mega Man Legends actually does fit nicely into this whole setup. The NES game debuted in Japan on December 18th, 1987, and exactly 10 years later, December 18th, 1997, Capcom celebrated the game's anniversary by pushing the franchise into the third dimension with one of its most ambitious games of the era. By 1997, Mega Man had gone from being a solid but esoteric game with a bad cover illustration to a major tentpole for publisher Capcom. This is thanks in large part to the glowing reception and publicity for the sequel, Mega Man 2, courtesy of American games magazines, which were just beginning to arrive on the market at the time. Mega Man 2 graced the cover of the very first issue of the era's big multi-format publication of record for the 90s, Electronic Gaming Monthly. It also helped that Mega Man 2 was a hell of a game. It was an immediate hit, especially in the US, and its success spawned 4 direct sequels on NES, plus more on Super NES, and eventually PlayStation and Saturn, along with 5 Game Boy ports, a few weird spin-offs, and of course the beloved Mega Man X sequel franchise. For Mega Man's 10th anniversary, Capcom decided to do something revolutionary with the franchise and move it beyond the traditional structure of the series. The result was Mega Man Neo, aka Mega Man Nova, aka Rockman Dash, aka Mega Man Legends. Mega Man Legends definitely was not, much to many fans' chagrin at the time, a classic Mega Man game. It didn't simply move beyond the traditional structure of the franchise, it spiked the classic Mega Man formula into the trash and did something almost, but not quite, completely different. Some changes were to be expected, of course. To better fit in with the style fans expected of Sony PlayStation games, Legends ditched traditional 2D bitmap graphics and sprites in favor of polygons and 3D action. But along with that bathwater, Legends practically threw out an entire nursery's worth of babies. Here, Mega Man is not a robot. Well, not exactly a robot, it turns out. Dr. Light doesn't appear, not even as a hologram. Wily is a stern but kindly boat captain, not a doctor, and he has zero designs on World Conquest, or on Zero for that matter. Mega Man runs and jumps and shoots, but with no mad, wily machinations to overcome, the threats he contends with are more faceless. There are no robots named Whatever Man, and defeating bosses doesn't give you a new weapon to swap into your lineup. You don't battle your way to the end by fighting through half a dozen stages in any order before taking on a final gauntlet, but rather by working your way through a series of interconnected passages beneath a single island. And the final boss is not a mad scientist's machine, but rather a clerical android whose identity and dialogue raise many, many questions about Mega Man's own existence. There aren't even any Metals here. Mega Man Legends is, in fact, an action RPG whose creators clearly felt little obligation to stick to the mechanics and concepts that defined a game 10 years and 2 hardware generations earlier. Instead, they sought to create a work as groundbreaking as the original Mega Man had been. And if it seems a little rough in places, especially its controls, designed a year before a dual-stick analog gamepad was launched for PlayStation, well, bear in mind all the incredible things it manages to accomplish for a 1997 creation. For starters, Legends ditches the pure action format of earlier Mega Man games and spin-offs in favor of playing out as an action RPG. This probably shouldn't be too surprising. Before signing on as Legends director, Yoshinori Kawano had one major accomplishment under his belt, designing Breath of Fire. Kawano brought this experience to bear on Legends by building a 3D shooter on top of the framework of a Zelda-style RPG. Much as in The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past, Legends takes place in a single location, in this case, an island called Catalox, with a single, sprawling town at its hub. The residents of Catalox are friendly to Mega Man, who crash lands on the islands with his guardian Beryl and adoptive sister Roll, a family of inventors who typically roam the world on their airship Flutter in search of wealth in the deadly subterranean passages that honeycomb the planet. Much of your time in Legends is spent chatting with Catalox's residents and performing helpful tasks for them. These are largely elective tasks that range from taking part in televised races to bringing joy to the life of a sweet-natured girl in the hospital. And in fact, sweet-natured would probably be the best description of Legends as a whole. It's a wonderfully upbeat game, marvelously free of cynicism or cruelty. Mega Man crash lands on Cadillacs, and the citizens are only too happy to help him and his surrogate family get airborne again, even before he becomes a do-gooding hero to the entire population of the island. Legends draws heavily on the works of Hayao Miyazaki and Studio Ghibli for its look and overall vibe. This is especially true of the apparent villains of the piece, the Bond family of air pirates. Like Mega Man, the Bonds roam the world in search of buried treasures. They're all diggers, scavengers plundering the mysterious refractor power sources left behind by a forgotten civilization that once ruled the planet.
Let's do it!
Before the world was flooded and land became a scarce resource. Unlike Mega Man, the Bonds aren't especially nice about it. They prefer to take refractors by force rather than by getting properly licensed to explore the world's ruins. The Bonds arrive at Cadillacs at the same time as Mega Man, who rebuffs their initial assault on the island's city hall. Later, he undermines their efforts to break into the underground by digging their way down, at which point they set their sights on taking him down. Mega Man never fights the Bonds directly though, always instead doing battle with the massive war machines built by the family's middle child, a teenage engineering savant named Tron. Tron Bon is probably the most blatant lift from Studio Ghibli in the game, at once temperamental and impetuous, yet a mother figure to her crew. In this case, her crew consists of 40 adorable androids called Servbots, who basically resemble childlike Lego versions of Mega Man, and whose design and concept would be swiped and adulterated to the point of offense by DreamWorks' Minions. Well-meaning and innocent in nature, the Servbots are cheerful accomplices to the Bond family's acts of piracy, but they don't mean anything by it. Tron and the Servbots seem wholly inspired by Dola and her pirates in the movie Laputa: Castle in the Sky, all the way down to the airship they inhabit, and the fact that, in the end, they're not really so bad. Tron develops a massive crush on Mega Man that complicates each encounter between them and culminates in the ultimate act of negging, a towering war robot called Bruno, which she builds specifically to destroy Mega Man. The Bonds do a lot to elevate Legends above mundanity. Besides archetypal tsundere Tron,
Let go of me!
the family also includes a baby named Bon who rides around in a powerful, armored shell reminiscent of a cross between a Metol and Baby Commando from Captain Commando. Then there's the blustery elder sibling Teasel, voiced to exquisite perfection by Canadian voice actor Rob Smith.
I'm gonna try to forget this entire incident. It feels good to say that. My heart feels as clean as the blue sky on a cloudless day.
Smith plays Teasel as an outwardly manic, villainous blowhard, but inwardly, a caring family man who runs his pirate legion with an executive's eye for P&L statements and whose true, calculating nature is hidden behind his shouty facade.
Once he finds the treasure, we'll wait for our chance and take it from him.
What?
You didn't think I was going to just walk away, did you?
The spirit of Laputa pervades Legends in other ways. There are no hovering islands in the sky here, but the drive to uncover the mysteries of the past motivates the entire adventure. And the labyrinths are filled with menacing, monocular machines called Reaverbots, whose rusty, segmented designs immediately call to mind Laputa's sentry robots. They range in shape from squat pumpkin-like forms to shielded Ronin gunners to enormous titans that owe just a bit to Yoshiaki Sadamoto's Neon Genesis Evangelion mech designs, all built to propel intruders from moving freely through the passages beneath Cadillac's island. Like Laputa's guardians, the Reaverbots exist to protect a buried power that proves deadly when unearthed. In this case, that power is a population control satellite system designed to wipe the surface of Cadillac's island of all life from time to time, which is a pretty dark turn. As in Nausicaa or Castle in the Sky, the real danger here comes as a result of petty conflicts that unearth something far more dangerous. Unlike in those works, though, ultimately the bad guys are able to put aside their petty resentments and desires in order to help save the day. The Bonds end up proving they're not all bad and have a well-developed sense of self-preservation by helping Mega Man prevent the satellite system from scorching the Earth. So that's another huge deviation from classic Mega Man. There's much more of a story here than robots bad, kill robots. You do need to prevent a robot rampage from wiping out humanity, yes, but there's more nuance to it. In fact, without knowing more about the origins of the killer robots and satellites, it's hard to say if they're actually bad. Especially since Mega Man turns out to be part of the same system responsible for the Reaverbots and the Eden satellite. It's an intriguing hook for a story that will never be completed, but thankfully Legends is a cohesive enough game that the Cadillacs incident stands apart as a self-contained work. By the time the Flutter is repaired and departs for destinations unknown, Mega Man has taken part in dozens of stories and made the island a better place to live, in addition to preventing everyone there from dying. In short, the game's creators really seem to grasp a fundamental difference between action in 8-bit and 32-bit games: context and purpose. Cadillacs becomes a hub for Mega Man's adventures, and the more time you spend exploring the island and its town in search of cash and skill upgrades, the more meaning you'll ultimately find in preventing the island from being scorched off the face of the earth. The game subtly reacts to the player's actions too. For example, if you decide to be a jerk, Mega Man can ultimately earn a negative reputation. If you lie to a woman about your name, from that point on, she'll call you Hippopotamus. And your performance in preventing the Bonds from wreaking havoc on City Hall determines how expensive it is to rebuild the city. These are small details, but in this game, the small details count for a lot. Legends rewards players who take the time to investigate outside the critical path from the very beginning, allowing you to poke around, scope the lay of the land, and pick up hints about the island before the adventure even begins. Venture into dark corners of the game at the right time, and you can even glean hints about the Bond's next move by stumbling into servbots doing their usual lousy job of keeping secrets. And because the entire subterranean labyrinth is interconnected, you can also poke around places and uncover barriers that won't come into play until much later in the story. The underground probably features the biggest departure from classic Mega Man. The world beneath Cadillacs' surface is largely one space, with multiple entry points into the subterranean world situated around a main gate. You uncover more and more connections between them the more you explore. While the story-driven nature of your quest means progression is largely linear, you can create shortcuts, hop down from high platforms, and open doors that allow you to crisscross the island quickly. Some shortcuts even require you break through barriers with one of Mega Man's special weapons, the drill arm, which is Legend's other big departure from the classic games. Beating bosses here doesn't yield a thematic power-up. The bosses are either large Reaverbots or large Bond war machines, and while defeating them is critical to advancement, you don't usually earn immediate bonuses for doing so. Mega Man can only equip one alternate weapon besides his standard Bustard arm at a time. Here's where his sister Roll comes into the picture. As a mechanic, she can create Mega Man's special weapons from the spare parts you discover, and upgrade them and swap them out for you. This is a much more limiting design than being able to hop into a menu and juggle weapons anytime you like. Each trip you take into the underground requires players to choose which sub-weapon is best suited for the task. Mega Man's alternate weapons vary in function from much larger gun to more esoteric forms. In addition to the short-range drill arm, there's also a deadly short-range laser sword similar to Zero's, and even a pure utility attachment in the form of a vacuum that siphons up Zenny currency from the surrounding area. Honestly though, these tools are all secondary to Mega Man's Buster, which is his primary and most useful form of attack throughout the game. The Buster can be upgraded too. You can attach different components to the Buster that boost its projectile's power, speed, size, and rate of fire, and the most powerful of these typically come with trade-offs that require you to specialize to a certain degree. Mega Man can acquire other upgrades as well. A helmet that helps cushion shock, better armor, and rocket shoes that allow him to dash quickly over level ground. And of course, health upgrades. It's the very model of a Zelda-inspired action RPG. Arriving in Japan at the end of 1997 though, Mega Man Legends was remarkably forward-thinking. The brilliantly compact design of the world was matched by its thoughtful visual design. Legends made use of a fairly simple-looking cartoon-inspired visual style. It didn't exactly have the most advanced-looking 3D visuals of its time at first glance. Compared to the elaborate Goroud-shaded battle animations of Final Fantasy VII, it seemed downright plain with its flat colors and blocky character models. The genius of Legends is in its subtlety. The entire world looks like a single cohesive whole, and action scenes blend right in with its cutting-edge cutscenes. There are no full-motion video inserts here. Every moment of Legends is rendered in-engine, something you rarely saw in games of this vintage. Remember, Metal Gear Solid was still nearly a year away at the time Legends shipped in Japan, but this game featured fully voiced and animated in-engine story sequences. And unlike Metal Gear Solid, it even included facial animation that matched up to the dialogue. Well, they matched up in Japanese anyway. Each character's face was drawn and animated with textures, which were cleverly crafted to demonstrate a huge range of expressions on faces that were just flat polygons. This required a lot of fakery and scene-specific artwork, and the end results were so convincing and so effective that most people didn't realize just how much work went into the whole affair. Legend's story animations turned out to look so seamless and natural that they're easy to take for granted. In terms of other innovations, Legends also introduced a lock-on targeting system a year before Ocarina of Time gave us Z-targeting. The lock-on mechanic here is a bit more limited, you can't run while targeting, but the ability to snap your aim to an enemy and automatically shift your focus to a different foe after destroying the first was a huge help in a 3D character shooter designed before the idea of orienting a camera with a right analog stick was even possible. Of everything in Legends that has aged poorly, its 3D combat definitely stands out as not having held up. You can assign either lateral motion or camera motion to the PlayStation's shoulder triggers, but neither solution is especially elegant. That said, playing it on Vita and manually mapping shoulder button functionality to the right stick is a hackward delight. Ah, Vita, your creators gave up on you too soon, much like Mega Man Legends. Thankfully, Legends designers seem to understand the limitations inherent in their tech. Mega Man's Buster has a considerable degree of aim autocorrection, and combat is generally pretty simplistic. Boss battles largely amount to running in a circle around a foe while shooting like mad and nudging the camera to keep the foe in your sights. The most challenging encounters in the game tend to involve multiple fast-moving enemies, or large foes that attempt to pelt you with projectiles, like most of the Bond mechs. But even within this cumbersome framework, Legends still demonstrates some forward-thinking ideas. One of these is Mega Man's life shield, a sort of insulator around his health meter. It diminishes the impact of the first hit Mega Man takes from an enemy. That first hit lowers his life shield, but then it regenerates if you can go without taking more damage for a few seconds. If you avoid further damage, the life shield will be restored, giving you a sort of cushion that prevents you from constantly needing to top up your energy for every dinky little hit you take. The life shield can be semi-permanently broken if you're not careful though, so it pays to play cautiously. It's a great mechanic that would be adopted almost wholesale a few years later in Halo Combat Evolved and some of its sequels. That's not the only thing Halo would borrow from Legends though. There's also the huge debt Cortana owes to Roll. In addition to serving as Mega Man's mechanic, Roll also acts as his spotter, a constant voice offering guidance as you venture into the dungeons. Roll communicates critical info via radio, warning Mega Man of approaching danger or simply adding some color commentary to the sprawling labyrinths, helping to define them and the tasks within in ways that the limited early 3D engine couldn't quite manage. Unlike the codec in Metal Gear, this doesn't break up the action. Roll's commentary plays out through audio-only cues as players navigate the underground. And unlike Navi in Ocarina of Time, she doesn't constantly nudge and needle the player. Remote commentary like that provided by Roll have become old hat in video games, thanks in large part to the impact of Cortana and Halo. Yet here was Legends doing it, and doing it well, years earlier. Roll fleshes out the world, alerts players to imminent danger, and helps ratchet up the tension when her transmissions fade unexpectedly. She's a great addition to the game. While Mega Man Legends is definitely a product of its time, the early half of the PlayStation's life, it still holds up surprisingly well today. The combat definitely takes some getting used to, and the lack of certain modern gameplay conveniences can be tough to love. But the world of Cadillac's Island, both above and below ground, remains one of the most solidly crafted and populated settings in gaming. And, in some senses, Legends benefits from its age. It includes many mechanical and narrative ideas that would become standards in gaming in the years ahead, but at the same time, 3D action game design hadn't yet become codified or ossified. It's different enough from modern action games in both good ways and bad, that it somehow feels fresh today. Or if not fresh, then at least refreshingly different. There's a real magic about Legends that even its sequel failed to capture. It manages to combine both whimsy and brilliant world building with some decent action and memorable characters, all depicted through a building story that takes itself seriously, but not too seriously. As anniversary celebrations go, Mega Man Legends is the best 10th birthday gift the NES game could have hoped for. And if it doesn't play exactly like that NES game, well, that was kind of the point. Mega Man Legends was created to acknowledge that both the franchise and gaming as a whole were ready to move forward and grow up. Not in the grim and gritty gore and titty sense, but rather in the sense that the run-and-gun action of Mega Man could be even more interesting if it were enhanced with some strong narrative underpinnings. And the great thing about the Mega Man concept is that there's room for it to work in both the classic and modern styles. Maybe someday Capcom will realize that. Next time on NES Works Gaiden, building on another 1987 classic.